And catch up with the editor of Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill, again to catch up on the latest on the woke wars breaking out across the world. Brendan, thanks for joining us again. Look, this seems to just get more and more bizarre every day, every week when we talk about it. We're talking about protesters now who claim to be anti-fascists attacking statues of Winston Churchill. You noted on the weekend even a statue commemorating Abraham Lincoln was vandalised. I mean, where is the line here between radical action, perhaps anarchy, and complete ignorance?
I think a lot of them are very ignorant. I think that's pretty clear now. And the thing that it makes that's really clear to me is that this has nothing to do with George Floyd anymore. Everyone was shocked by the killing of George Floyd. Lots of people were very angry about it. But this has become something else. The George Floyd killing, I'm afraid, is being exploited by certain groups, politically correct groups, left-wing groups and others, to push forward an agenda that they had been pursuing anyway, which is a very unforgiving, quite destructive, quite illiberal agenda of wanting to erase the past if they don't like it, wanting to silence people they disagree with, wanting to shut down TV shows they don't like Little Britain and more recently Fawlty Towers. So it's become part of the woke war against reason and against liberty, and I think that's really tragic.
When you look at some of this cancel culture that's going on, Fawlty Towers is one example that's been used a lot. You know, that brilliant episode where Basil Fawlty says, "Don't mention the war," to his German visitors. But even back then, what was it, the 80s when Fawlty Towers was produced? Even then, surely John Cleese was digging at our own political correctness, at the fact that we couldn't mention the war to Germans. And here we are, 30 years on, and you can't even joke about it.
It's ridiculous. That episode of Fawlty Towers, probably the most famous episode of all, is actually making fun of Brits like Basil Fawlty,
exactly,
who are overly obsessed with the war, and who, little Englanders. It was really mocking certain British people. It wasn't mocking Germans. And the Major, who also stars in Fawlty Towers, he uses the N-word quite a lot in that episode. That wasn't mocking black people. That was mocking this Major who claimed to be a great war hero, but actually had lots of prejudices. So it's completely ridiculous to erase things like this or to put them down the memory hole temporarily until we work out if they're acceptable culture. I think we are witnessing a zeitgeist of intolerance that is spreading fast through Western society, and all sorts of culture, art, entertainment and people with wrong think views, they're all being consumed by this. I think we need to put a stop to it very, very quickly.
Well, the hypocrisy is astounding. It mounts every time. In Australia at the moment, we have a lot of people quite rightly protesting against the destruction of Aboriginal heritage sites by mining companies. Yet those same people are cheering the destruction of European cultural heritage. If you respect cultural heritage, don't we have to respect all of it, or the broad sweep of it?
That's right. History is full of bad people and good people, and some people who did bad and good. History is a very complicated thing. The idea that you can just destroy it like, some kind of woke Taliban smashing down statues you don't like is ridiculous. And you're right to mention the stupidity of Antifa protesters attacking a statue of Winston Churchill. I really have a problem with the way in which these people have claimed the title of anti-fascism. I don't see them as having anything to do with the noble cause of anti-fascism, whether it was the young men who went to Spain in the 1930s to fight against fascism, or all the millions of young men who fought against Nazi Germany. These were brave people. That was a fight for freedom. That was a fight against a racial form of politics. What we have with these modern so-called anti-fascists, they're incredibly illiberal. They're not in favour of freedom of speech, as we've seen with their antics on campuses over recent years. They're obsessed with the politics of race, and they want to put everyone into a black box or a white box or some other box. It is a complete crime to call these people anti-fascists. I think that's an insult to the people who died in the cause of anti-fascism, and we have to call them what they are. They're ignorant, they're illiberal, and they're having a destructive impact on society.
The big question, though, Brendan, is how we overcome this, because, sure, there's a tiny minority that march on the street and tear down statues, but when we have corporations sidelining particular television shows and comedies and getting into the same sort of virtue signalling and this cancel culture, it's spreading more widely. We know the mainstream don't abide this. We know that from elections and from everything else going along. But the public debate and the political debate is absolutely dominated at times by these extremists. How do we overcome that?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, and I think you've nailed it there. The real problem is not even the mobs on the streets who are tearing down statues, although I think they are quite destructive and should be dealt with. The real problem is institutional cowardice. It is the unwillingness of certain sections of the political class, virtually the entire corporate elites, the universities, of course, which were conquered long ago, the inability of these institutions or the unwillingness to stand up to this and say, no, we're not going to ban that thing you don't like. We're not going to apologise for that thing we did. And we are not going to deplatform speakers that you disapprove of. We just need a bit more confidence from some of these institutions, because I think every capitulation emboldens the mob, it emboldens the censors, it makes them push further and further. I think we can actually take some inspiration from J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling has been witch hunted ceaselessly for weeks now, and in a really horrendous way, simply because she believes in biological reality and she is sceptical of some aspects of transgenderism. She has not backed down. She stuck to her guns. She wrote a brilliant essay a few days ago saying, this is why I believe what I believe and I won't be changing my mind. And I think lots of institutions in the West could learn from that and just start to say no to those people putting pressure on them to censor things or to change themselves in ways that they don't want to.
Spot on, Brendan. We need some courage, and she is showing that at the moment. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.